All right, y'all. I have a question. Is this cool yet? Was the PSVR a success or failure?
Welcome to NFTP Debates. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Wright, joined alongside my brother and co-host, Greg Artolona. Now, before we dive into today's topic, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and click that like button, click that subscribe button, and then after you've watched this video, go ahead and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Okay, for today's topic, was PlayStation VR a success? What do we know about the PlayStation VR, Greg? Was it a commercial success? Was it a critical success? Was it even fun to play? You and I both owned one of these machines at one point. You still do. I sold mine. What do you think, Greg?
Do I love VR? If anyone loves VR, I love VR. I bought a Galaxy headset right when it first came out, the first real commercial Gear VR units. I bought an Oculus when it came out, when my computer could barely run it. I pre-ordered my PSVR the day I possibly could and waited like a kid at the mailbox for a year and a half for it to get there. And it was alright. It was alright.
So tell me about your experience with it. What was the first thing you thought when you put it on?
It was the first 6 Degree of Freedom headset that was on the market, available, and that I owned, right? So you're in a situation now where you can walk around the room and you actually move in that space versus the Gear VR, other kind of headsets or Google Cardboard where you can look around, but at the end of the day, you are where you are. If you take a step in real life, you're not stepping in real world. So for the first commercial unit available to the masses, with the PS4 being sold way exponentially more than people whose computers at the time had like a 970, which is the graphics card you needed to run an Oculus. It was so exciting. It was like, this is going to be it. Everyone's going to have VR. Everyone's going to have the ability to access it, and it's going to take off. And I was just utterly excited. And where we really ended up at is only 5 million units sold out of 100 million PlayStations. It came. It's fun. There's plenty of fun things. I love the things I love. But it's not the best unit on the market. It actually has some glaring flaws that make it just almost comical compared to the inside-out tracking units we have now. And in fact, you actually have lights on your head versus just sensors, even from the original Oculus. And when you put all that together, it didn't grip the masses. It wasn't the Wii like I wanted it to be with the motion controllers. Everyone's grandma was bowling all of a sudden in their living room. I wanted it to be that. And it was good. It was all right. It was all right. But it wasn't what it should have been.
Sure, but I think one key point when you're trying to answer this question of is PlayStation VR a success is you have to realize the lens of like how is Sony defining success. And I think to Sony, they very much did come out and say, okay, consumers, we're setting expectations. This is first generation hardware. Like, you have to come on this journey with us. This is early adopter stuff here. And I think they look at that 5.2 million units as a success because that's not an insignificant portion of their install base. Not to mention that if you look at their competition in the VR space, you're talking 5.2 million sold between 2017 and January 2020. And that same time period, Oculus only sold 3.3 million units and the Vive only sold 1.9 million units. So this single piece of equipment, VR, has sold almost as much as all of its competitors combined. So to me, if you're in that VR space, you have to think of that as somewhat of a success. And that's before we even get into software. Because when you're talking about software and PlayStation VR, what Sony has been able to work out with partnerships and how they were able to support it with their development studios, I mean, I think it shows that they're really behind it. This isn't the PlayStation Vita. You have exclusives like Astrobot, Robo Rescue, Blood and Truth, Until Dawn, Rush of Blood, Firewall Zero Hour, not to mention the AIM controller that came with Farpoint, which was amazing, and nothing else like that exists.
Best gaming experiences of my life to this day.
plus you had really nice like storybook experiences like Moss, and then Sony on top of that is able to garner these timed exclusive AAA VR titles like Skyrim VR was a timed exclusive, Borderlands 2 VR was a timed exclusive, Arkham VR, Resident Evil 7 VR, and Star Wars Rogue One, the X-Wing mission that was part of Star Wars Battlefront. All of those were timed exclusives for the PlayStation VR, and software sells hardware. And it's clear that developers want to be in on PlayStation.
Well, clearly software didn't sell hardware here, right? Because all of those titles that, as far as VR goes right now, is marquee, is AAA. And though that list of titles, which is really amazing, only pushed 5 million units. That's a disappointment.
But you look at the total market, though.
Okay, yeah, but why are we debating market share for a market that doesn't exist? The fact of the matter is, VR in its entirety has not captured a market that I was hoping for. And I understand. Expectations are what breed disappointments, right? And my expectations for VR, the dream of VR, like, as a kid, what if you could put your headset in and then you're actually there and then you could walk around? I mean, that's like, we were all 10 years old and wanted that. And then when it actually came, it's like, wait, hold on a second. From the days of virtual, but why is this not what we wanted? Why did this not capture the world like we? So you're framing it as, was it competitive against the other underperforming VR headsets? Sure. Was its titles great for a VR headset? Yeah, it was. I wanted this thing to take the world by storm. The most three things I've been excited for in my life at this level. The first one, the birth of my son. Second one, marrying my wife. And the third one is waiting at that mailbox for my PSVR to get here. Let me tell you something. The first two are still awesome.
Listen, man, I think you're looking at this all wrong, because you're trying to make an argument that maybe VR shouldn't even exist because the market's so small. But this is how these markets start, and we always knew it was going to be niche, because at the end of the day, it's a niche experience. Like, even me as a gamer who loves VR, and I've said this on the podcast, at the end of a long day, I don't want to stand up and have these intensely immersive experiences in Half-Life Alyx. Like, I want to sit back and drink a beer and play some Rocket League. So, I mean, I have to be in a certain headspace, and you have to have a base unit, whether that's a PS4 or a PC or a laptop capable of running this. You have to have something to drive it, so that's cost prohibitive to certain people. And then you have to have the actual space to play it. I mean, it doesn't have to be a ton of space. I mean, you look at this room. This room's not big, but I play VR in this room. Did my dad punch a hole in the wall back here? Yes, he did. But I'm telling you, like, you don't need a ton of space to play VR.
You're making my case for me here, though. You're telling me all the reasons that it wasn't as successful as the Wii.
But I'm saying for Sony, this was, I think, by their defined metric of success, I think Sony would perceive this as a success, because not only were they able to bridge the gap between PS4 and make it compatible with PS5, but you think about it, they're still pushing those Move controllers from the PS3 and finding a way to sell those things.
And here's the most terrifying, this is the most terrifying thing about all of this, is I honestly believe that Sony is planting themselves a poison pill right now, because with the PlayStation 5 around the corner, and they did not mention anything about VR. Now, look, when these VR headsets came out, the bundles were around $500. And as far as we know right now, we expect the PlayStation 5 to be about a $500 console. They're not going to put two $500 things on the shelf in one holiday season, right? So we have to ask ourselves, which one of these two things is going to happen? One, PSVR isn't going to be around at launch, and it's going to feel like, oh, that was just a happened thing and it's gone. Or two, if you can use your VR headset with it, then, oh Lord, this technology is going to feel so dated. The fact that we're still using visual light tracking with one single camera with barely separated lenses to attempt to triangulate, which makes your accuracy for these type of things way off. When you have people, they have the wrong kind of ceiling lights and all of a sudden it doesn't work like it should, or the window reflected wrong, or the wind didn't blow right.
Well, things you have to understand is they're coming out with a new camera for the PlayStation 5. I think that will help. Secondly, we know that there are rumored patents for inside-out tracking that Sony has filed. And if you need, and we're not arguing whether or not there will be a PSVR 2. We're not arguing whether or not VR should exist. We're arguing, does Sony view the PSVR as a success? And I think 5 million units sold, an estimated $2.3 billion in revenue from hardware and software sales. In its first year, it sold 21.9 million games. That is an attach rate of 7.3 games per unit.
Right there. So we have to take a step back there and let people know that is remarkable. Yeah. I mean, there have been successful consoles with an attach rate of 2 to 3, meaning every person on average only owned 2 to 3 games for their console. And that was like a thumbs up good. The software, there's people like me that for 2 straight years bought every single title for these VR units because we're so hungry.
Right.
So if you're making a case for why it's successful, it's because the people like me that are disappointed that it's not better, the people like me are still really excited that we're still pushing that direction and they're not abandoning it. Please, Sony, please listen to this video on a YouTube channel with 27 subscribers, man.
Woo!
Listen.
All right,
do what's right.
So verdict right. Time, Greg. You ready to do the verdict?
Look, man, I'm there right now.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It was a success because it took a market that didn't exist, created a fanatical fan base that's willing to buy an average of 7 games a piece for their console.
At least in the first year, and even if you're talking not that many consoles sold, that's still a pretty rabid, hungry fan base. And you know it grew from there.
The people like me are still there with it.
Yeah.
And we're still going to buy the next one, and we're going to see this thing grow. I just really hope that they get with the times, like the newest Oculus, the inside-out tracking, the ease to set it up. It's one simple cord and the headphones or audio built into it. That simplicity instead of trying to dangle things up and shake hand controllers.
The beacon tracking is more accurate, but it's hard. I mean, you are sacrificing some for simplicity, but when you're talking about a super consumer-focused market item, like piece of hardware like PSVR, it's not for enthusiasts. Like, you're actually trying to get mass appeal. You cannot make it super complicated to set up.
No, and look, if they want the next PSVR to be the next Wii, and I don't mean the Wii U, don't get me wrong there, they have to make it easy to use and they have to get the price down. This can't be a $500 attachment. It needs to, and they still need to keep treating it like a marquee piece. This is coming from a place of love, Sony. It's not a failure, but do better.
And I can agree with that. I think I'm safe in saying I won this debate, right?
Yeah.
So 2-2. 2-2. But what I will say that I ask from Sony is make it easier to set up. Give us inside-out tracking. Give us wireless if possible, and start putting PSVR games included and bundled with PS Plus, because it doesn't make any sense why it's not.
I'm gonna tell you right now, wireless isn't coming. But everything else you said, let's do it, Sony. 27 subs. 27 subs. Listen to the influence.
Click that subscribe button. I'm putting a link at the top of our comments. All you got to do is click it and you will be auto-subscribed.
30th subs getting a shout out on next week's video.
Woo, woo, woo.
Looking for you.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. You have a fantastic week. We will see you back here next week. We will try, but we are never free to play. Are you peeing? What are you doing?
Hey, you ready?
Oh, yeah, cold open here.
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready, dude.
Because I have a question for everybody.
Hold on, don't cold open yet.
Oh, I'm cold opening so hard right now. I forgot the name of this topic.